Hello and welcome to World Talks on TVP World. My name is Anna Kalczynska. It's no longer if, but how to use the Russian frozen assets for helping Ukraine defend itself. Defense ministers from the A5 group of Ukraine's key European allies met in Berlin as governments confront mounting security concerns while seeking new ways to bolster support for Kiev. One tangible result is there. German defense minister announced Berlin will provide Ukraine with another 150 million euros in US weapons. But many questions loom as to the security for financial credibility of Belgium, set to give up its intransigent stance to give away the bank deposits of Russian assets. To explain what is at stake and what this meeting may reveal about Europe's evolving security landscape, we're joined by Jenny Mathers, Senior Lecturer in International Politics at Aberystwyth University. Good morning, Madam, and thank you for joining us here on TVP World. So let us start with the first and most important question, I believe. How realistic is it that these assets that we're talking about for so long could be redirected to Ukraine in the near term, given the legal and political hurdles?
Well, I think this is the question because Belgium has been so reluctant to take this step. It's a risky step from their point of view. They're very worried about the potential implications. At the end of the war, what happens then? Will they be held responsible? Will they be asked to pay Russia back in some respects? So they're looking really for cover, for financial and diplomatic cover. They want to be sure that they're not standing alone, in this issue if it should all go wrong. So I think what we've seen is that European states have been edging or perhaps tiptoeing closer and closer to trying to find ways of releasing these assets so that Ukraine can be supported, through its reconstruction. And, this is the big challenge facing Europe, is whether they can persuade the Belgians that they will indeed come to their aid if it's necessary. So I think they're taking it quite slowly, the Europeans, because they want to be confident that all of the legal issues have been resolved. But I think, looking ahead perhaps a few months, I'm optimistic that they will find a way to release these assets because it's such an important contribution, or would be such an important contribution to the reconstruction of Ukraine.
Well, just as the Deputy Minister of Defense of Poland, Paweł Zalewski, said, it's no longer if, but how to use those assets. But what security guarantees for Belgium have been discussed, and what are they potentially? You mentioned financial and diplomatic, but what does it exactly mean?
Well, it means that Belgium doesn't want to be sort of left alone if the Russians should demand some sort of compensation, if they should demand the assets to be repaid. So it will involve European states providing sort of guarantees that they will help. It will be providing sort of legal assurances that they have explored all the different aspects of the law and that they're confident that this move to take the assets and use them for Ukraine would hold up in a court. And so really these are the directions that they're moving in to try and reassure the Belgians.
As the Prime Minister of Belgium, Bart de Wever, says on multiple occasions, citing the Russian threats, that he's simply not confident about whether the security of Belgium is guaranteed in this respect. Do you believe that those talks shift toward a more collective European approach to those using of those assets, and that there is going to be a joint effort on a diplomatic stand?
I think so. This is the way that all of the talks and the discussions have been moving for several months now. And, it's been clear that this is an important practical step towards helping Ukraine, as well as an important symbolic step, which demonstrates European unity and European support, in this very important endeavor of in helping Ukraine through the war and then helping it to be reconstructed afterwards. So yes, I think the Europeans have been moving in this direction for quite some time, and it's very important for the entire kind of joint effort to support Ukraine that this actually happens. And so I think the stakes are growing higher, the importance is growing greater, that the pressure on Europe more generally, as well as on Belgium, is increasing. So I think there is a lot of effort really to try and overcome this obstacle and achieve this result.
A lot is being said about helping Ukraine, about investing in Ukraine's defense, about joint defense on a European level. However, don't you have an impression that national interests are still dominating the discussion?
I think this is a very important challenge that the European states have to overcome. And I think the way that they can overcome it is by increasingly recognizing that their national interests are best served by cooperation. And I think this is the message that the EU has been trying to get across, that NATO has been trying to get across, that if each state only considers its own individual national interests rather than the common interest of defending each other and protecting against the threat that Russia poses, then no one will be safe. Really, they all have to stand together because only if they pool their assets, only if they cooperate, only if they're willing to make some compromises, will they be able to provide an effective defense and an effective deterrent against the various security threats that Russia is currently posing, and against the way that Russia is sort of pushing at the boundaries, constantly trying to test the resolve of Europe. And if Europe doesn't stand together, then it will be much easier for Russia to divide the different countries and to try and do separate deals with them, or to try and intimidate them individually.
Mm-hmm. Coming back to using those Russian frozen assets, could decisions made in Berlin set a precedent for how European states handle those assets in the future, and oligarchs' assets in general?
Absolutely. And I think this is one of the reasons why the Europeans and the Belgians in particular have been taking this so cautiously and slowly. They know that it will present a precedent. It will be something that in the future actions can be based upon this measure. So if they go forward with this, then in the future there might be pressure to do similar things in other circumstances. And so they have to be very careful, of course, that what kind of a precedent they're setting is going to be one that they're willing to refer back to in the future, and that it doesn't open doors that they don't want to open in terms of how future assets might be used in other circumstances.
What are we not hearing here? Because Paweł Zalewski, the Deputy Defense Minister, says that also hybrid threats were being discussed in Berlin. Do you think that those security guarantees discussed in Berlin signal wider concerns about the vulnerability of European states in front of those hybrid attacks and hybrid war being waged by Russia?
Absolutely. I think this sort of method that Russia has of using a variety of different tools and instruments to intimidate, European states, using drones, using Russian aircraft flying into the airspace of other countries, for example, sabotage operations, as well as disinformation and propaganda campaigns. All of these things together, they can be very effective at reducing the confidence of European societies in their own security and in the ability of their own states to protect them. So it's a very difficult challenge to address effectively. And I think it's one that they're rightly worried about. But the way that they're going about trying to address it is through joint action, both in terms of, increasing their capabilities, increasing transport links, making it easier to move troops and weapons around so that they can get to where they're needed. For example, to fend off drone attacks or attacks or potential sort of incursions by the air. All of these things are really important. So they're discussing and agreeing a whole series of very practical measures which will help them to deal with the specific elements of hybrid war. But at the same time, the fact that they are discussing it and the fact that they are showing a united front in public is also very important, because part of the game that Russia is playing is a psychological game. And so the more that the Europeans can demonstrate resolve and determination to stand in the face of Russia and to resist Russia, I think the less effective these psychological games will be.
The obvious element of this psychological war that you mentioned, and the main concern is obviously how might Moscow react if Europe moves ahead with using Russian assets to support Kiev? And how seriously should European capitals take the risk of retaliation? What do you think?
I think Russia will complain, of course. This is not a measure that Russia will welcome, quite the opposite. And money is really at the root of what keeps Putin's regime in power. It's those connections between industry, private business, government, and indeed criminality, which are all, the wheels are all greased by money. And so the threats to money, from Russian sources is going to be one that they take very seriously. And we don't know exactly how they might respond beyond rhetoric and complaints and making threats, presumably. But I think it's very important for Europe to look at this issue with very clear eyes, because if they step back when they're threatened, if they step back out of fear of what Russia might do, well, then Russia wins again. And it's another step in this psychological war where Russia is gaining the upper hand. So it's very important to show, resolve and determination in dealing with this as well as other issues.
And to close, what outcomes, be it financial or political, from this meeting could you see as indicator of a stronger and more unified, more resolved European security posture going forward?
Well, I think the steps that they're taking are very positive ones, and I think the determination will be revealed as they follow through with these things. They've made a series of announcements about measures that they're going to take. So taking these measures and being seen to take them is important. Continuing to cooperate, using their military forces together, using their capabilities together, that's important. Continuing to meet as the representatives of the five European states, which are have the largest militaries and military industries, that's important as well. So it's a step along the path, and what's important is that the path is continued forward in the same direction and even strengthened, rather than being seen to stop or go backwards.
So it was a good meeting in Berlin. Thank you so much. Jenny Mathers, a senior lecturer at the Department of International Politics at Aberystwyth University. Thank you, madam, and have a good day.
Thank you.
See you soon. And thank you for watching World Talks, but please stay tuned to TVP World as more is to come. So see you soon.